And welcome back to the sixth episode now of the White Belt Podcast. Today is Saturday, January 26th. It's quarter till 6 p.m. right now. And it's also the first podcast in the new year, so happy New Year's to you guys. I know it's like 25 days too late, but better late than never. I haven't been completely not busy. I have been working. I have been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes in terms of the podcast. I created a Twitter account for the podcast, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. It's at whitebelt_pod, P-O-D. I'll go ahead and add that into the description of this YouTube video, and if you're listening on iTunes, go ahead and check that out. I'll be posting updates and stuff like that. Hopefully I'll be tweeting out when there's new podcasts out and stuff like that, and when I'm going to be going live, or when a podcast is scheduled, or whenever. Anything podcast related, or anything related to when a podcast might be coming out, you can find that on the Twitter, or on the White Belt Podcast Twitter. And also, some new things too will be rolling out. Like on Instagram especially, some graphics and stuff like that. You guys will see new graphics on the Instagram account for whenever I post new podcast, or whenever a podcast is about to come out. Same thing, anything podcast related, you'll see some cool new graphics that I've been working on. You can go ahead and check out the podcast too on Instagram at White Belt Podcast. Just at White Belt Podcast. But yeah, that's pretty much really all that you're gonna see for right now. I have some more smaller things I've been working on here and there. Hopefully, trying to get some things worked out. I'm gonna try to get the podcast, at least the podcast accounts verified. Because I am on iTunes now, so I am I guess an official podcast. It's in the iTunes library. And I guess iTunes was really the people that invented podcasting, or podcast. I guess it's essentially the same thing as whatever radio broadcasting, but I guess and this platform is different, so because it's not through a radio. But I guess it's all the same thing. But I guess I'm starting to ramble. But there has been a lot of stuff that has happened since the last podcast, which is the beginning of December, the very beginning of December. It's been a while. I apologize, and I am going to try to work on being more consistent. I know I say that a lot, but that is going to be my New Year's resolution. It's going to be something I'm going to try to stick to, because this is something I want to do, and I want to grow this, and I want to work on this, and I want to make 2019 the year that I grow the podcast, and really take things off. It's what I want to do. So expect a lot of new stuff coming out this year. Be on the lookout. But in terms of MMA news, it's been 1 week exactly since the Cejudo Dillashaw happened. That was crazy. That whole card was crazy. To start with the Cowboy Cerrone and Alex Hernandez fight, that fight was great. I thought it was. I was definitely surprised by how Cowboy performed. He started slow, but Cowboy always starts slow, or he normally starts slow. But he made adjustments, and he started to ramp it up towards the middle and end of the first round, and definitely in the second round he ramped it up. Knocked out Alex Hernandez in the second round with that head kick. I thought it was sweet, great for Cowboy. Because, during the whole press conference, I'm not sure if a lot of you guys listened to it, but Hernandez was saying all kinds of stuff, talking trash, calling Cowboy insecure, calling him old and withered and all this stuff, and it was just funny to see Cowboy put a beating on him after he was calling him old and withered. But that was pretty funny. And then the Cejudo and Dillashaw fight, that was insane. I did not expect that to go down the way it went down. I was telling people you can't sleep on Cejudo. I did have belief in him that he could possibly pull through. If I were to put money on it, if I were to put betting money on it, I would go with Dillashaw on that fight. Cejudo definitely surprised me. I didn't expect it to be in 32 seconds or whatever, however many seconds it was, something 30 second mark, somewhere around there. I did not expect it to go down the way it did. And I know that TJ Dillashaw seemed to think that it was a little bit of an early stoppage. In my opinion, it was kind of an early stoppage, but TJ was definitely getting tagged, and I know he tried to say he was doing a single leg attempt, but if you go back and watch it, he was not doing a single leg attempt. He was on his hands and knees, literally crawling towards the leg. You can go back and watch the video. And he called that a single leg attempt. So I will say, maybe it was a little bit early of a stoppage, but TJ definitely was getting tagged. He did get clipped. when he was trying to get back up, Cejudo clipped him and he dropped straight back down. So he definitely was doing damage. And if you look at his face, he did damage to him. So he was definitely taking some sort of punishment or some sort of some punches. So I mean, I understand kind of where he was saying it could have been an early stoppage because, yeah, it kind of seemed pretty fast because it all happened so fast. But I don't think you can deny that Cejudo wasn't hurting him and doing some – he was definitely doing damage to him because if you just look at his face, you can tell. Even Dana White – even though Dana White said that he thought it was early stoppage, even Dana White said that it looked like he was in a 5-round fight or whatever, which I don't understand. I feel like that kind of contradicts what you said. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. I mean, that fight's definitely going to happen again. I think they already basically confirmed that was going to happen again. I don't know if it's – I mean, I don't think TJ really cares where it happens. I think he just wants the rematch. I think Cejudo wants to move up and win or have an opportunity to win the second belt. And TJ did say he wants the fight to happen, or he wants the rematch to happen again at flyweight because he feels like he can beat him at flyweight. But I really don't think it ultimately matters where it happens. And I think Cejudo wants to go up, so I think it'll probably happen at bantamweight, just because technically Cejudo won the first fight, and I guess that kind of gives him the power. And I think Dillashaw really doesn't care, so I think he'll just do whatever. So that fight probably will happen. And then Cowboy and Conor, that fight, I mean, I haven't heard anything from Dana White in terms of like official news if that's actually going to happen. But I mean, normally whenever Conor comes out and says something like that, normally it happens. I think Chael Sonnen even said the same thing. Normally, like you can look back at any time in Conor's career. Normally, when he says he's going to do something, he does it. And whether it's fighting someone, where he fights someone, what sport he fights him in, he's usually pretty honest and he means what he says. So I think that fight we can almost say it's a done deal between Cowboy and Conor, and I guess you can say the rematch between Cejudo and Dillashaw most likely is almost guaranteed. Also, what happened back in December, UFC 232, Jones versus Gustafsson 2. Well, first off, I want to talk about the Nunes and Cyborg fight. That fight was insane. I kept telling people too. I told people you can't. I've had a feeling that Cyborg was gonna knock her, or that Nunes was gonna knock Cyborg out. I just had some. I don't know. I just felt like I had some. I felt like it was the first time that Cyborg's really faced a striker like herself, someone who's as ruthless as her. And Nunes has some legit striking. Like, she's a legit striker for sure. There's no doubt about it. She might even have better hands than some of the guys like in the UFC. But no, she's definitely a legit striker, and you can't. I think it was the first time that Cyborg's really faced someone of like that elite of a level of a striker, or just someone that good. I don't think Cyborg's really faced that level of talent, and I think it was a little bit of a shock. And I think what Nunes did was smart because she said she was trying to bait her into a brawl, and that's what happened, and she clipped her. I think her striking was just superior to Cyborg's. I think Cyborg, Cyborg in terms of striking is probably more powerful, but I think in terms of precision and actual technique and everything, I would say Nunes is probably better. So I think she probably 9 times out of 10 probably wins. If it were a boxing match, I think 9 times out of 10. Nunes probably wins. Maybe, I don't know. I think I could give Cyborg more credit, but I think people overlooked Nunes's striking ability. At least from my perspective, I think that's what. At least that's what I think. But for the Jones and Gustafsson fight, I think that's probably about how I'd expect the fight to go. I was surprised that that Gustafsson didn't do a little bit more on his feet. He wasn't. I mean, he just didn't seem like himself. He did say though that John Jones did shut him down pretty fast early on in the fight in terms of just disabling him physically. I thought that Gustafsson was going to be a lot better in terms of just at least hitting John Jones, landing strikes. He barely did any of that. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'd love to see what the strikes were. I feel like John Jones had a significant advantage probably. And I just think John Jones looked a lot better. I think before the fight he did say that the first fight between Gustafsson that he didn't train that hard, and that's why the fight was so close. And I think now after seeing the second fight between them, I think you could probably say that he was being honest about that, because he said he was training the hardest he's ever trained in his life for this fight. He's training really hard. He's in the best shape of his life. And I think that kind of John Jones, when he's on his game and he's really working that hard, I really don't think anyone can beat that John Jones. I mean, the only person that I could really see in the UFC is if it were a third fight between DC. I feel like he's the only person that really has a shot at beating him. I know that the UFC 235 is coming up between Anthony Smith and John Jones, which I'll get into that here in a minute. I don't think you can sleep on Anthony Smith in that fight, but I think John Jones is probably going to run through him. Like I said, I'll get into that later. But I don't think there's really anyone in the division outside of DC that could probably have a chance at stopping John Jones. Maybe if Ryan Bader somehow they could have like a crossover super fight between him and Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader could have a shot at beating John Jones too, but that probably won't happen because he's over in Bellator. And by the time contracts are up and all that stuff, for that to line up, for it to work, I think both of them will be past their primes to where it's like there's no point even doing that fight. So I really don't think you can't even make that fight between him and Ryan Bader. I think Ryan Bader has a shot, but I feel like since that's really not even like, and that's really unlikely. I'm just gonna probably throw that out the window. So I think the only person that really could beat John Jones is Daniel Cormier. Anybody else, when John Jones is training when he's training, doing a full training camp, working hard, and he's actually not just going through the motions and getting away with it because he's just that good, but he's actually put in the work like everyone else. I don't think anyone can beat that John Jones because it was evident on December 29th. He absolutely dominated Gustafsson really didn't do a whole lot to make me think that he even had a chance at winning that fight. I thought going into it he had a better chance, but I think once that fight started and I saw John Jones and the way he was moving, the way he controlled the range too, in terms of the striking, you can tell his understand. He did say that he was working on his striking a lot in between whatever the last DC fight and now he's been working on his striking a lot, and I think that's been very evident. You can tell, especially with this fight and his understanding at range, and especially with someone like with Gustafsson, who's just as long and lengthy as John Jones, even though I think I know Jones has still the reach advantage, probably like a significant amount. But someone, that's as tall as John that can give him fits with length. He's never faced anything like that, so I thought going into the fight that Gustafsson would give him more fits than what he did, but it was pretty evident that his striking has improved because understanding of range, the way he was able to keep Gustafsson at his range, but not allow Gustafsson to get within his range to do damage he just looked really good. And I feel like I'm getting way too nitty gritty and breaking this down too much. But if you want to go back and check it out, you can see what I mean. In terms of like Gustafsson just didn't have the space to get the shots off that he did in the first fight, just because of John Jones' understanding of range in that fight. And I think he looked great. And then rewind all the way back to December 8th, I believe, was when UFC 231 went down, Ortega and Holloway. I'm really only going to touch on that fight, but that fight was insane. Max Holloway, I think Max Holloway definitely put up a good argument for the greatest featherweight of all time after that fight. He beat Jose Aldo twice, who was supposed to be the best, and I feel like, Conor, like I said, I think Conor's a very good fighter, but I think the blueprint for beating Conor's already out there, so it's kind of hard to say that. And I feel like someone like Holloway, he grows in between his fights and he gets better. I don't know. I think it's really hard to deny right now that Holloway's probably the greatest featherweight of all time, especially after that performance, because I thought Ortega talk about someone who can grow in between fights. As someone who's just like a raw jiu-jitsu fighter, to be able to develop the striking that he has. Even though he has been boxing since he was like a teenager, the striking that he has for someone who is to be that lethal, both standing up and on the ground, is insane. But I think then you could see the difference in like the levels of striking between Holloway and Ortega. Ortega's a really good striker. But you could just see that Holloway was levels better. And also talk about gas tank. Brian Ortega has a great gas tank, but he started to get tired towards the end. And Holloway he had the most significant strikes landed, I think, in a fight. and like the most strikes landed or most strikes attempted or something in the fight. Like he threw the most strikes ever and never once was tired. He never got tired during that whole entire fight, and he threw like the most punches in UFC history, which is pretty impressive. Not to get tired, and for someone to make someone like Brian Ortega, who is known for his gas tank, to make him tired, is pretty impressive. And I think probably, I mean, I think the same thing, probably the same situation is at featherweight. I don't think there's too many people that could. I think it's more likely that Holloway loses before John Jones loses, but I think it's the same scenario. I think he's just that good. I think I think John Jones is more. I keep saying I think, and I apologize for that. That's something I need to work on. But John Jones is more well-rounded than Max Holloway, in my opinion, in terms of ground game and just being more versatile and more of a threat all around in all aspects of the fight. I think that John Jones is more rounded. But Max Holloway is, I think, the featherweight division definitely has way more talent too than the light heavyweight division, so there's more threats for Max Holloway. Alexander Volkanovski looked great in his fight. He definitely probably is going to be getting a title shot here soon. Zabit's tough, but we have to see. He hasn't really faced real competition yet. He will be fighting Jeremy Stevens though at UFC 235, which I will get into. Trying to think who else. Brian Ortega's tough. I could see him coming back and getting better, and possibly winning. I could see him definitely winning a belt before he retires. I feel like featherweight definitely has more talent, and there's definitely more of a chance that Holloway loses, but I think Holloway's pretty tough. I think he'll probably continue to win. At least I could see Holloway winning at least 3 more fights before he loses. I just think right now he's 27. He's not even in his physical prime yet. He still has 3 years until he's technically in his physical prime. So I just think that Holloway, he probably won't lose for at least another 3 years, because he's not even in his prime and he's already this good, and he's already way better than the number one prospect. You saw what he did to the number one contender. He completely pieced the number one contender apart. So I think that just shows how good he is. He's not even in his prime yet. So I think we're gonna probably be seeing a little bit more Max Holloway before there's probably a switch up at featherweight. But yeah, that's really it for to gap us together between the last podcast and now. But to get into things in the future, UFC 235 is going down in March. I'll get the date for you here in a second. March 2nd. UFC 235. I think, in my opinion, this is probably one of the best cards, if not the best card they've put on in a while. And they've been putting on great cards like like the last latter half of 2018, like that last 6 months, they were putting on great cards, and they're still continuing to do it. Just to name a few fights for that card, you have Jones and Gustafsson, which I'll break down and get into here in a minute. You have also Woodley and Usman, which Colby Covington gets snubbed yet again of his title shot. You also have Garbrandt versus Munoz, Lawler versus Ben Askren, which I'm excited to see. I want to see Ben Askren really face some top tier talent, or some of the best in the world. Robbie Lawler is no slouch, and I think that's a great matchup for him, especially the striker wrestler matchup. I think it's great. Then you also have Zabit facing Jeremy Stevens. You also have Aspen Ladd versus Holly Holm, and OSP facing Misha Serkinov. And that's just to name a few. There's still, I think, Diego Sanchez is fighting on that card. There's a bunch of great fights. Actually, I'll try to pull up Jorge Masvidal is fighting Neil Magny, Diego Sanchez, and Mickey Gall. Yeah, those are the 2 fights I was missing. But yeah, this card is stacked. I'm excited for it. For the title fight, though, in terms of early predictions, like I said, I'm gonna go with John Jones. The only real threat, in my opinion, that Anthony Smith poses to John Jones is on the ground. And John Jones is a black belt in Gaido Jitsu, and he's a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But he's really, really, he's a great grappler. So even though Anthony Smith is a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, I still feel like John Jones will probably, because he's just that good. Like Daniel Cormier, an Olympic wrestler, couldn't even take John Jones down. And I don't know. I just think in terms of grappling, I think John Jones, like I said, is just that well-rounded. I think is even though that Anthony Smith is a black belt, I think that's the only area that is on the ground. That's where Anthony Smith poses the greatest threat. But I still think that John Jones is that well-rounded that his grappling is just superior to Anthony Smith, which, like I said, I'm not trying to discredit Anthony Smith by any means, but I just think that John Jones is that good. But if Anthony Smith were to have a chance, like I said, it would be on the ground, given the fact that he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think for the Kamaru Usman and Tyron Woodley fight, I'm going to go with Woodley. Actually, I don't know. I feel like that's a tough fight. It's a great fight. It's a great matchup. Woodley's tough, so I feel like that's a safe bet. I'd like to look into that further before I really give a final prediction on how I think that's going to go down. But my early prediction, if I'm just guessing, safe bet, it's probably Woodley. I hope Garbrandt wins. I'd like to see him get back and hopefully maybe get another crack at the title eventually. Probably won't happen for a while, but I like him. I'd like to see him maybe get another crack at the title. Maybe move. He could move up. He's fairly tall for bantamweight. He's like 5'9", so you could definitely move up and be comfortable at 145. I think 5'9's pretty good. Max Holloway is 5'11", so it's only 2 inches. I really don't know who I'm gonna pick for the Lawler Askren fight. I really don't know. I honestly don't know who I'm gonna pick, so I'm not gonna say anything for that. Zabit, Jeremy Stevens. I'm probably gonna pick Zabit. It's probably the safe bet. Holly Holm versus Aspen Ladd. They're going to go with Holly Holm. And OSP versus Misha Serkinov. I don't know. OSP just came out. He's coming off of that knockout loss. I'm probably going to go with Serkinov just because I feel like OSP is probably on the latter end of his career. So I'm probably going to go with Serkinov, but I really don't know. Like I said, these are just early predictions. I haven't really done my research and read into these fights and these matchups yet. As the fight gets closer, I will definitely break that down and get into it more. Next month, though, we have the Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva fight. I'm looking forward to that. That's actually come around a lot faster than what I expected. I am pulling that card up here on my computer right now. And then it's the Whitaker and Gastelum fight. That's the main event, and then the Adesanya and Anderson fight. It's the co-main event. For the co-main, Anderson Silva versus Adesanya. I definitely think Anderson Silva is going to come out tough, and I really think he's probably going to give Adesanya the hardest fight that he's probably had so far in his career. I think that Anderson Silva, though, I think he's had a lot of time off, and I just think he's also coming down towards the latter end of his career. I could probably see maybe 3 or 4 more. I could say 3, maybe 3 more fights out of him. I could see this fight with Adesanya. I could see a Nick Diaz rematch and maybe him fighting McGregor or something, or maybe a fight with him and GSP. I don't know. Maybe another fight with I don't know. I don't know. I could just see him going for like just money fights after this. But I think Adesanya will pull through. I think he's just younger, faster. I think he's just got youth on his side, and I think he's just gonna. I don't know. I keep saying I think, and I apologize. I think Adesanya's gonna win. I think Anderson Silva is definitely gonna put up I think he's gonna put up a good fight, but I think his time's passed. I apologize for saying I think. It just drives me nuts. I know I'm probably making myself sound crazy, but it drives me nuts because I hear myself saying it. But for the main event, I have there's Robert Whitaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. I'm probably gonna go with Robert Whitaker. I think Kelvin Gastelum. You can't count Kelvin Gastelum out because he has a puncher's chance. He could knock Robert Whitaker out, but regardless, I really think if Adesanya wins his co-main event fight, I think both these guys are gatekeepers for Adesanya. I think these are gatekeeper guys. Whitaker's tough. I think Romero won that last fight, in my opinion. And I think if Adesanya beats Silva and Whitaker beats Gastelum, I think Adesanya is going to probably piece up Whitaker. It'll be a great fight. Robert Whitaker being Australian and Adesanya being from New Zealand, or he's actually Nigerian, or he's from Nigeria. I don't know if he's from Nigeria, but his parents are Nigerian, and whatever, he lives in New Zealand now. So I think the New Zealand and Australia matchup, that's like a classic rivalry. I think it'll be good. I think it'll be good to promote. I think Adesanya is gonna beat Silva, and I think Whitaker will beat Gastelum. The only shot Gastelum really has is the puncher's chance, in my opinion. He could knock him out, so don't count Gastelum out. But whoever wins the co-main event most likely will face whoever wins the main event. So basically, this is just a setup. It's like, I guess, a tournament in a sense, like a middleweight tournament. It's really just set up for the next title fight. So the two winners will face each other. I think Adesanya will pull through and probably win it all, and I think he'll probably end up winning the middleweight championship by the end of the year. That's my opinion. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna wrap up this sixth episode of the White Belt Podcast. I will be coming out with new episodes, like I said, hopefully every week. I'm gonna be working on that. I'm gonna try to be working on just doing things, small things here and there, to improve the quality of the podcast, and little things like whether it be stuff on stuff I post, the graphics, whatever, speech, stuff like that. Saying I think, I really need to stop saying that. That's like saying I need to stop saying too. Just work. I just did it right there. Working on things like that, and I just did it again. Working on things like that, improving stuff like that, making things better, and hopefully working towards growing this podcast and making 2019 my year, because I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode. Please share it. If you have any friends that are interested in MMA or anything MMA related, hopefully I can branch out and start talking about other things, which I'm wanting to do. I just really haven't got around to do it. I need to do it, and hopefully write out like an outline for like I want to do like maybe like a more sports oriented, like just a broader thing. Like I can cover football, basketball, because a lot of controversial stuff going on in football. With the NFC Championship game with the Chiefs and Rams, a lot of controversial stuff I like to talk about, because I do pay attention to a lot of other sports, especially basketball and football. I'd like to branch out and maybe talk about stuff. If you guys other things sports related. If you guys would like that, just let me know in the comment section of this YouTube video. And if you haven't already checked it out on iTunes, like I said, share it, tell people about it, get the podcast out there, grow it, and I will see you guys when I see you guys next, whenever I come out with the next podcast. I appreciate you guys listening, and I will catch you guys later.